Alright, welcome back. Here in this part two, we're going to take a look at the Sassafid Empire, the kind of progress and kind of built in weaknesses that helped contribute to its eventual decline, and then round out this segment with affairs of state and what's happening within the Ottoman Empire and some reversals that it experiences, which help to really kind of weaken its authority from both within and without. For the Sassafid Empire, was a resurgence early in the 17th century. From about 1603 to 1607, they were going to manage to reconquer territory that had been lost at the hands of the Ottomans, actually. There was a creation of a new thriving capital, Isfahan. This was a major commercial center during its heyday, along with an unofficial slogan, you might say, where people often uttered Isfahan is half the world. So it was a major trading post that primarily European powers sought to open to their advantage. In 1604, the Mughal Empire is going to send imperial envoys. They're going to formalize relations with the Sassafid Empire. This meant the official kind of exchange of gifts. There were assurances of friendship, and there was also a common border in what is today Afghanistan that the two states shared that was pacified during this period of time. By 1617, the British, the English again, were making an appearance through their private sector, the English East India Company. They were going to establish trading houses in Isfahan, and therefore there are followed very shortly thereafter in 1621 by the Dutch East India Company that opened their own trading relations. And very quickly, it's the Dutch that are going to begin to eclipse all other European powers. Initially, they're going to come to dominate European trade in essentially the area of Iran today, in the Persian Gulf area. Roughly during the same period of time, about 1630, silk became the most lucrative export of the Sassafid state, and so the empire, the imperial house itself, began to consolidate that business in its own hands because it proved to be so lucrative that it established a monopoly in its favor. There are a series of cultural developments taking place as well. Again, going back to 1621, you have the death of Sheikh Bahai. This was the most powerful Shiite cleric in the Sassafid Empire. What is significant about this sheikh is that he wrote and studied and made vital contributions in areas outside of Scripture. This included fields of study like mathematics, medicine, logic, astronomy, and poetry, and jurisprudence or law. What happens after Bahai dies is that future clerics within the Shiite faith no longer wrote about science and mathematics. So there's basically a distancing of kind of what you might say is the scientific approach or scientific mindset between that and the religious order within the Sassafid Empire itself and the dominant Shiite faith. In spite of that, by 1629, there had continued to be advances made in the medical sciences. Works continued to be produced that described and told of new instruments being used to perform surgery. There were papers or documents written outlining various forms of and applications of anesthesia to safely bring patients through surgical procedures. And there was also an advocacy for surgery in order to remove cancerous tumors. So we're talking about some rather advanced medical science here, but again, it wasn't done. It was done independently in many respects of any type of more official um, representation or collaboration. By 1640 or thereabouts, fortunes begin to change for the worse within the Sassafid Empire. In 1639, there's a peace treaty that was executed with the Ottomans, where the Sassanids lost control of Baghdad and the Iraqi region for good. Under Abbas II, reigning from 1642 to 1666, the Sassafid army began to decline in both its size and also in its quality of troops as well. Under Shah Suleiman Safi II, who reigned immediately following Abbas II from 1666 to 1694, the food prices are going to begin to rise. There would be a famine and disease begin to spread throughout the empire, leading to domestic, kind of unrest and instability. In 1694, Sufism and Sunni Islam were largely eradicated, and there was also a systematic persecution of non-Muslim populations, including Zoroastrians, Jews, and Christians alike. The Shiite clergy began to gain in their power and influence also during this period of time, so much so that they began to be no longer fall under the secular authority of the state itself. They were exempt from government law, instead falling under the jurisdiction of Quranic law and the Shiite faith itself. So the clergy here is beginning to experience a great deal of autonomy within this Sassafid Empire. By 1722, an Afghan army successfully invaded the Sassafid Empire. An Afghan army that managed to sack Isfahan, and so the key source of political power was now nullified, essentially. Also, from 1622 to 1623, both the Russians and Ottomans began a series of incursions on the frontiers of the Sassafid Empire. The Russians, in particular, seized lands around the Caspian Sea region. The Ottomans conquered parts of what is today Western Iran. And both the Russians and the Ottomans began to peacefully partition the Sassanids' northwestern provinces, these areas that they had taken control over themselves. They now negotiated independent of the Sassafid Empire to maintain peace between Russian and Ottoman interests in that area, overlapping interests. And so this is an even greater affront to Sassafid authority and influence in the region, that they aren't even invited to participate in any of these negotiations of these lands that were once under their control. The last kind of nail in the coffin here comes when Nadir Khan is going to ascend to power. He reigns from 1736 to 1747, and this marked the end again of the official kind of Sassafid Empire as it could be defined. Khan is going to place a puppet figurehead on the throne, but it was really Nadir Khan that is going to call the shots and govern the affairs of state for what used to be the Sassaniid Empire. And this began, he uses this event, his consolidating of power, as a methodical march of conquest. In 1747, he was, however, assassinated, and after a series of intermittent, brief periods of rule, Aga Muhammad Khan is going to crown himself Shah in 1796, establishing the Qajar dynasty. Now, from there, we're going to shift once again our attention to talking about the Ottoman Empire. And by the 16th century, the Ottoman Empire had involved itself in conflicts with both its neighbors to the east and west. We've already kind of alluded to some of those with regard to the Sassaniid dynasty. But it would also have kind of a foot in the European sphere of power as well. This continued to be the case into the 17th and 18th centuries. For example, from 1593 to 1606, there would be a series of conflicts with the Habsburgs, which would result in having destabilizing effects of Habsburg presence on the frontier provinces that were under Ottoman control. So basically what you have here is the Ottomans beginning to encroach upon traditionally kind of Habsburg territory, and now the Ottomans are beginning to consolidate control over areas that were predominantly non-Ottoman. We'd already taken a look at this, in earlier segments as far as how the Ottomans began to pursue relations with, non-Muslim, mainly non-Muslim populations within their empire. But now, as they encroach on the Habsburgs' sphere of influence, now those are going to be really put to those types of relations are going to be put to a real severe kind of test, increasingly so as they penetrate deeper into Europe. The provinces of Wallachia, Moldova, and Transylvania specifically rose up in rebellion against the Ottoman Empire and Ottoman rule. This proved to be highly costly for the Ottomans. This was compounded by renewed threats about the same period of time coming from the Sassafid Empire and areas to the east in places like Iran. There were also a series of internal revolts that kind of made matters worse as well. And these internal threats were not subdued until about the year 1609. As a result of these conditions, the Ottomans were forced to sue for peace with the Habsburgs. And this really kind of marked a perpetual problem moving forward for the Ottoman Empire and its leadership, that they spent so much time and energy and resources on trying to govern that it had an exhaustive type of effect on the Ottoman state. They were fending off so many different areas and so many different threats in pretty far-flung areas of their empire, and having to govern over such a diverse kind of multicultural, you might say, population, that the Ottomans were rarely able to reach terms of peace where the Ottomans themselves were dictating the terms. They were more often at the mercy of when they found themselves at the negotiating table, and having to engage in international treaties and international relations. This isn't to say necessarily that the Ottomans were obsolete by any means. I mean, that was going to be a long, slow process of decline. To give you an example, by the 1610s, the Ottomans had constructed the Blue Mosque in Istanbul, and they had also constructed another elaborate mosque in Cairo, in what is today Egypt, that was in the Ottoman imperial style of architecture. And they also managed to conclude a treaty of commerce with the Netherlands in 1612. So they were able to project their influence in cultural and economic ways. But so in this sense, really, what that the mentality being conveyed here, the sense being conveyed during this period of time in the Ottoman Empire, is that it's an empire that is idling. By 1638, they did succeed in taking back Baghdad from the Sassafid Empire, as mentioned earlier, and that was kind of a once and for all, essentially. By the mid 17th century, from 1645 to 1669, they managed to conquer Crete. However, during roughly that same period of time, the Venetian navy from northern Italy is going to, or what is today northern Italy, is going to erect a successful blockade of the Dardanelles. This lasts from 1648 to 1654. This is the narrow kind of channel that connects the Aegean Sea with the Black Sea. It is the channel, the straits on which Istanbul is located today, and so it's which is the imperial capital of the Ottoman Empire. Well, here you have this foreign power, this Venetian navy, blockading essentially the main artery of the Ottoman Empire, and flaunting this in the face of the powers located in Istanbul itself. So grain shipments, as a result of this blockade, were halted from feeding the population in Istanbul and elsewhere in the Ottoman Empire. Grain that was coming from Syria and Egypt was no longer accessible. To add to the humiliation, the Venetian navy destroyed the Ottoman fleet in 1656. So it made the Ottoman Empire look even more impotent here as far as its ability to kind of impose its will. From 1672 to 1676, the Ottomans went to war with Poland, and were moderately successful in that conflict. They managed to gain control of southwestern Ukraine, or what is today Ukraine, and bring the rest of the Ukrainian region under the Ottoman Sultan's control, as far as acting as in the form of acting as a suzerainty. It's not under direct control of Ottoman influence, but nonetheless, there is a deference paid, essentially, to Ottoman authority, where it was directly implemented in southwestern Ukraine. The following year, however, Russia went to war with the Ottomans, not at all happy with the injection of influence by the Ottoman state. And so from 1677 to 1681, the Ottomans are going to have immediate problems with trying to, again, project their power in this region of their empire. As a result, the Ottomans were forced to relinquish control over the Ukrainian territory located beyond the Dnieper River. Again, kind of pulling back the curtain to see that the Ottoman state was not really as robust and powerful as it really came across. During the Second Siege of Vienna in 1683, the Ottomans were once again forced to retreat. This is a major turning point in our focus here on the Ottoman Empire. It was the closest that the Ottomans got really to seizing control and making penetrating even further into the heart of Europe, essentially. But this siege was ineffective, and again kind of showed the weaknesses of the Ottoman state. The defeat was so bad, in fact, that the Ottoman commander of the forces involved in that siege was executed. There was also going to be a war with what was known as the Holy League that quickly followed up on its managed defense of Vienna. From 1683 to 1699, the Habsburgs, Venice, Poland, and Russia are all going to ally themselves against the Ottoman Empire. So as a result of this, the Ottomans are going to lose Hungary, Transylvania, Croatia, Slovenia, Serbia, and Macedonia. So this is a significant rollback and retreat of Ottoman interests in southeastern Europe. Now, the Ottomans were able to recover some of these losses or parts thereof, but they were forced to recognize the Danube River as the new defensive line between these, conflicting parties in Europe and with the Ottomans. It marks this kind of slow retreat from southeastern Europe that would continue over the course of the next several decades. In 1699, the Ottomans were forced to enter into what was known as the Treaty of Karlowitz, where the Russians ascended to dominance in the Black Sea region. More broadly, the treaty marked the beginning, really, of the Ottomans' withdrawal from impacting European affairs whatsoever. The Ottoman power was shifted to the defensive from here on out, essentially, and Europe gained the initiative in places like southeastern Europe, but also gained the initiative in the eastern Mediterranean Sea as well. Moving into the 18th century, in 1703 to 1730, what's known as the Tulip period, basically the Sultan's family and powerful bureaucrats within the Ottoman state had an obsession with this flower, so it was known as the Tulip period. This era, I guess, started with a rebellion where you have Janissaries in Istanbul being joined by thousands of soldiers and tradesmen and ulama, the religious leaders that were unhappy with the fortunes of what was happening with the Ottoman Empire itself. They were becoming frustrated. This also became a period of extravagance and cultural vibrance within the empire, characterized by the elite's obsession with the tulips, as mentioned. There was also expansion of several presses, printing presses throughout the Ottoman Empire, one of which was the first Arabic printing press in the Arab world. It was established during this period of time. Interestingly, it was established by Christians, in the Levant area or region of the empire. Wars did erupt and continue during this period of time, this tulip period. There were conflicts that arose with the Ottomans' traditional European adversaries. For example, in 1711, Egypt rebelled. Egypt is also going to kind of take advantage of Ottoman weakness and rebel against Ottoman rule. Um, as a result of this internal discord, the Ottomans' authority was relegated really to that of figurehead within one of the key provinces of their in North Africa. The Ottomans, in fact, wouldn't reimpose direct authority until about the year 1786. So for much of the 18th century, they are just kind of uh, uh, paid lip service as far as their influence in Egypt. Throughout much of the 18th century, Ottomans were really preoccupied with their increasingly weak and ineffective uh, leadership, starting with the sultans themselves. There was also a series of natural disasters that didn't help matters. This included two devastating fires within Istanbul in 1755 and the following year, 1756. There was an earthquake, a serious earthquake in the Levant region in 1759. And there was also, again, this ever present, it seems, intermittent war with European powers. Rather numerous to elaborate upon, but nonetheless, it gives you a sense of how ceaseless the threats were coming at the Ottoman Empire here. In 1798 to 1801, France is going to succeed in occupying Egypt. This is done at the hands of Napoleon Bonaparte, who again we'll take a look at on the other side of the second exam coming up. Uh, Interestingly, Napoleon and his army landed successfully and established their authority in Egypt. However, the British managed to destroy the French fleet that had, ferried Napoleon and his troops across the Mediterranean. As a result of that, France was stranded in Egypt, the French forces, and they were, by 1801, in such dire straits that they were forced to surrender and evacuate from Egypt. And when that happens, Britain takes control of Egypt. And during this entire period of time, from 1798 on, Egypt and its population, its kind of native population, were exposed to European modes of warfare, political administration, taxation, and also this kind of approach as seen in scientific inquiry. As a result of that kind of exposure, many historians see this period of time, this event essentially, as the origins of the modern era in the Middle East, kind of a westernization of mentality in a growing Middle East power in Egypt itself. So, again, that should be taken with a bit of a grain of salt. I mean, that it is Western oriented in its interpretation of these events. But nonetheless, this is a significant event as far as just another step in the long road to the Ottomans' demise. So what we've seen here in these two parts of this lecture is that in places like India, to begin with, there was a distinct power base and administrative bureaucracy, but it was being increasingly encroached upon by the British, specifically the British private sector initially, but increasingly by the British Crown, as seen through its passage and enactment of the India Act. In Qing Dynasty China, there is a series of successful territorial expansions that take place. There's also a period of cultural growth that also begins to take root as well, and a greater interaction with in the diplomatic field with its immediate neighbors, specifically Russia, and also neighbors farther afield like Britain as well. But again, it's important to keep in mind that in the Qing Dynasty, by the 19th century, is going to have to adjust rather rapidly to growing series of Western contact, and so this is something that China would have increasingly kind of difficulty with in keeping up and maintaining kind of their sense of autonomy, sense of self in the midst of that rising tide, essentially. In southwestern Asia, you see the atrophying, I think, of the two major states that define that part of the world: the Sassafid Empire succumbing to its more powerful and ascendant neighbors, and also the Ottoman Empire becoming, just mired in almost constant warfare with rival powers, as seen in the Second Siege of Vienna, and its kind of high water mark that the Ottoman Empire enjoyed. But even in the midst of that, it was having its own troubles, kind of trying to keep its head above water, to carry on that metaphor. It suffered from the Ottoman Empire suffered from inconsistent rule, poor governance. There was internal instability, best witnessed and seen in Egypt, and also that encroachment of European influence and exercising of control in the Eastern Mediterranean and also in southeastern Europe as well. Napoleon's invasion of Egypt is a perfect example of that. British consolidation of power on the immediate heels of Napoleon's exit from Egypt, and also the introduction of European influences, primarily again in Egypt itself, are really going to be serve as an existential threat to the Ottoman sovereignty. So that gets us to giving us a pretty good sense of what's going on around the world up to about the year 1800, which is going to be the culminating point for as far as our second exam is concerned. So I'll end here, and like I said, on the other side of the second exam, that I'll be putting live on the blackboard, we'll pick it up with the French Revolution, the Napoleonic era, which will get us into the 19th century and kick us off for the final third of our course here. All right, take care and good luck on the exam.